Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. At BriteVibe, we believe everyone deserves to be happy. But in today's world, everywhere you turn, there is division and negativity. At BriteVibe, we have created a global movement to bring 8 million people together who are inspired to live bright, live bold, and share bright vibes. Alone, it can be hard to change, but together we can change the world. Welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. All right, Dr. Nate Regier, welcome to the BriteVibe podcast. Happy to have you on today.
Matt, it's good to be here. Good to see you again.
It's been a while. We've known each other, I don't know, 10, 15 years, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, just the other day, I was driving by one of the original places where we met and one of the places that you helped start. And it was just kind of some great memories thinking about some of the difference you all were making back then.
We were just kids. We were just kids back then, right?
I know.
So you've got an interesting line of work and have an interesting background. I did call you Dr. Nate Regier at the beginning of the show because you do have a doctor. What's your doctorate in?
Clinical psychology.
Clinical psychology.
Yeah.
And you have a consulting company now, and you do a lot of stuff in the, I would call the psychology space, but a lot around leadership, a lot around organizational leadership, individual leadership obviously falls into that category as well. You've got several books out. You mentioned this term pre-show, compassionate accountability, that we're going to get into. But really, what made you want to be? I always like the backstory, right?
Yeah.
I always like the backstory. I love the backstory. Everybody has a story to tell, and usually it's a very interesting story. So, what in the world made you want to go into the field of psychology? Why would anyone do that?
Yeah, I know, right? And I am in recovery. I should say that. So,
aren't we all constantly?
It wasn't my original plan. My original plan was to be an entrepreneur. And I started with a declared business major in college, and I took Econ 1, and I was like, what is this? I'm not used to thinking this way. I took Econ 2, and I got a B, and I wasn't used to getting bad grades. And when I went to pick up the textbook for Econ 3, this was in the late 80s. And the book was huge, like 3 inches thick, and attached to it, shrink wrapped, was a floppy disk, a 5 1/4 floppy disk.
Right.
And the bookstore lady said, oh yeah, this disc, I guess these things can hold as much information as like 100 books. And I was like, that's it. That's it. And
tapped out?
I tapped out. I lost all my confidence, and I went and changed my major to psychology and figured, maybe this whole idea of wanting to influence people and make it big, maybe it was more about influencing people to make a difference in the world. And that's where I changed to psychology. I think it was meant to be all along, but that was kind of a big moment for me.
And so you got into psychology, and then you actually worked in like addiction clinics and some stuff like that. Isn't that part of your background?
I did. After my doctorate work, I started work as a clinical psychologist. I did everything from inpatient addictions treatment groups to neuropsychological testing to older adult and aging type of services. I was really lucky to work for a large multi-specialty behavioral health clinic where I got to try a lot of stuff. And once I started getting involved in their adventure ropes course and getting involved in more consultation liaison work in medical settings, getting into the mind, body, spirit stuff, I was hooked. I loved kind of the consulting liaison kind of in the moment work with people.
And then and now you are an entrepreneur because you started your own consulting firm, and so you and I know it's much more than just a consulting firm, but so you backed into it. It looked like, but you
I did.
but you got there. But what do you spend? And I've been trained in some of your stuff back in the day again, but what do you spend most of your time now working? Or what type of organizations, what type of systems are you working with?
We're working with medium to large organizations that are kind of on this cusp of realizing that culture matters because it drives everything. And that what drives great cultures is great cultures of leadership. And people are struggling because of the challenge to attract, retain, and develop great people. It's hard. The labor market is really tough, and having really good talent is tough. So we work with companies who are starting to get it, that culture matters, leadership matters if you want to tackle these big things and if you want to crack this nut. And so that's really a great place for us to get involved because they're willing, they're open, they're curious, maybe don't know what they don't know yet, but they do want to make a difference. And so that's where we can really, I guess that's kind of our sweet spot.
And you have a specific model, and feel free to jump in with the stuff you've written, but then
Yeah.
the model, but PCM, right? Process communication
The process communication model is one of
model.
our tools. We
Right.
are a distributor in the United States for that. So we
Yeah.
train and certify and serve clients and trainers around the United States with that model. That's one of several that we use.
Mm-hmm. And is that which I guess model are you using now? Because that's the one I was familiar with, because that's
Yeah.
what you were using then.
Process communication model is really important part of our stable, of our toolkit. We have developed several proprietary models since then, and one of
Mm-hmm.
them is called leading out of drama, which is
Mm-hmm.
really about how do you turn the energy of conflict into positive, productive results.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote 2 books about that. And then the other is called the compassion mindset, and that's really about what is the framework, the mindset, the skill set, the strategies for infusing cultures with more compassion. And so we've really pioneered a more evolved definition and understanding of how compassion works in business cultures. And we have several models and assessment suites that support that.
Okay. And I know a lot of the work is around drama. Leading out of drama, obviously, is in the title here. I've studied and trained some stuff in the drama space,
Yeah.
like how to diffuse and kind of what are the we had David Emerald come on here, came on he was actually our first podcast guest when I took over with the empowerment dynamic. Typically, what causes drama? I mean, because we all see it, even if we're not engaged in it daily, for a lot of people that is, where they live. But what causes, what's at the core of drama when we look at drama?
Yeah, David Emerald's work is great. And the drama triangle, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of manifestations of that basic, elegant model for how to understand dynamics. What causes drama? Maybe we should first identify what is drama.
All right, let's start there.
Our working definition of drama is it's the misuse of conflict energy to feel justified about our negative behaviors by struggling against each other. So misuse of conflict energy presumes that there's differences and disagreements. It's going to be natural that in the world of diversity, we're going to have conflict, and that produces a lot of energy. The real question is, what do we do with that energy? And drama is when we misuse it. Well, how do we misuse it? Well, because we take that energy and we assume and set up win-lose scenarios, adversarial interactions. And so once we set up an adversarial interaction, why? Why do we do this? Well, because the only modus operandi of drama is to feel justified. That is the only goal. It is the end goal. The sole purpose of drama is to feel justified, which means being able to say, see, I was right about whatever. Doesn't matter what it is. I win, you lose. And it could be I'm right about being a loser. Like, see, I always lose. See, nobody likes me. I never get picked for the team. So drama is this really crazy self-fulfilling prophecy that plays to the dark side of what we are as humans, which gets to what causes it. I think the root of all drama is the human need to be justified. We want to be justified, meaning in a way you could say we like to play God with ourselves and each other, meaning I'm going to be the one to rule over who's right and who's wrong and under what conditions. We like to call the shots. And so that's what causes drama, is just kind of our basic nature. But when we get deeper, in the PCM model, you can see how all different personality types try to play this game when they're in distress. They try to set up scenarios where they can say, see, I was right. And you're wrong.
Right.
And so we also have personality tendencies that how we play that game of drama. And so those are just some of the causes of it. And it's unfortunate. It's part of the human condition. I think it's something that we are always trying to lean away from. If we're trying to become better people, more evolved human beings, we're trying to find ways to combat that.
And since this is totally your background and your space, why is drama more prevalent in some than others? Like when I look at my Facebook feed, I'll just give an example, right? So when I look at my Facebook feed, for the most part, I kind of prune out people that seem to do nothing but talk negativity, right? At some point. But then I still have a few on there that I leave on there for entertainment value. If that makes sense, right? Because they're not dramatic all the time, but once in a while they just lose their shit. If that's a clinical term,
and it's kind of a show, right?
right. And I'm just like, I don't engage in it, but I do witness it, and I'm just like, for the most part, I can say, there by the grace of God go I, or Yeah, I've been there. I just didn't
Yeah.
post that, right? I mean,
Yeah. I felt it. I was thinking it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I felt it right thinking it.
Yeah.
So, but why does it seem to be that some people have a tendency? What do you think's happening there? Where some people have a tendency to just
Yeah.
drama is their life, like like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
everything is drama, versus like a Mother Teresa or a
Sure.
not that she didn't have drama, she did, but I mean, based
Yeah.
on stuff I've read, but people that have less drama, right? You see other people on your feed,
Yeah.
or you just know other people, and they just don't have a lot of drama in their lives.
I think
So
there's a
what?
couple of reasons.
Okay.
One, drama is sexy. Drama is seductive. It's fabulous entertainment. So
Right.
we like to say that drama is great for the stage, but bad for the
Mm.
boardroom. Or
Right.
we like to say drama, good for ratings, bad for business, right?
Right.
It taps into kind of that human nature. We love to hate certain people. We love to love other
Mhm.
people. It makes for a good plot line.
Mhm.
So it's sexy, it's seductive. It's easy to get hooked in and wrapped up. I think another reason though, why people become drama queens or kings or whatever
Mhm.
is it gets results. It gets attention. You
Mhm.
get a ton of attention in drama. It may not be what you need, but it's what's coming to you. And
Right.
so I think it gets a lot of attention, and it can be kind of be a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's something really satisfying about being justified. Even if
Mhm.
I'm always on the bottom of the pile, to be able to say, see, that's how I knew it was going to turn out. See, I predicted it. And then I think the third reason, this is where we get into it with leaders, is I don't, I'm not aware or skilled in a different way of getting what I need.
Mhm.
And so I just go about it that way. It requires skill development, self awareness, being able to count to 10 before you hit send, to be able to say, look, there's a lot of energy here, but I could choose to use it a different way.
Mhm. And when I see, yes, totally, 110%. And when I see it and I kind of feel into it, because it's, I see the different people on there that specifically use it to get attention. And I think, and just in the social media, I'm still kind of in that social media space. To me, it seems like they're lonely. To me, it seems like that if I'm lonely, if I'm feeling disconnected from the world, if I'm feeling lonely or afraid, I can go out and I can post something on social media. And the more dramatic it is, the more controversial it is, the more people are going to notice me. So maybe I don't feel alone for that day, or I don't feel alone. So for me, that's what I sense. I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's just my sense of it.
No, I like that. That could take us somewhere here. It's maybe I got a lot of likes today on that post, or maybe a
Right.
lot of people engaged and shared it, so I feel popular today.
Right.
And that's a real issue with younger folks, kind of this
Mm-hmm.
addiction to the social media.
Mm-hmm.
But your comment about alone, I think, is important. And this is where compassion comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Compassion is the antidote to drama.
Mm-hmm.
It is the medicine, because drama always ends you up alone at the end of the day. You
Mm.
always are alone, because drama is adversarial. There's always going to be a winner and a loser. And
Mm-hmm.
either way, you're alone. And so think about how we struggle. We all struggle. Life is struggle, and we can
Mm-hmm.
choose how we want to struggle. You can struggle against each other in a win-lose situation. You could struggle alone, which means just don't tell anybody and just suck it up and be lonely
Mm-hmm.
and spiral by yourself. We see too many, we see how that ends.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could struggle instead of, which means go try to fight everybody's battles for them.
Mm.
And you end up alone because people don't like that. They don't like you to come in and rescue them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another kind of struggle. And it's the struggle that I think as humans we're called to perform. And that's struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a point, that's a process of reconnection. That's a process of saying, look, I'm suffering, you're suffering, let's do this together, and let's use our differences and disagreements and that energy of our conflict to create more intimacy, more innovation, more
Mm-hmm.
connection, more trust. And so look at the word compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Calm means with, passion means suffer.
Mm.
So compassion is not just kindness, empathy, altruism. I'm going to go, rescue that dog on TV because I feel so horrible seeing it suffer. That's important. We got to do that. But real compassion is a call to get in the trenches with people. Let's get in this work together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's really about, we're not going to get rid of the struggle, but we could change how we struggle from drama to compassion, which means let's struggle with each other. And that's a whole new skill set and paradigm shift for leaders.
How are you defining compassion? Then you're defining
Yeah.
it as to
Yeah.
struggle with, but what does that actually mean? What,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
tactically?
Tactically, we have to have working definitions, just like we did with drama. So
Hmm.
our definition of compassion is it's the process, compassion is the practice of demonstrating that people are valuable, capable, and responsible in every interaction. Three important parts here. I'll break it down. So it's the practice of demonstrating. It has to be visible. It has to be evident through our behaviors, and we practice it.
Hmm.
It's a skill and a habit we can learn, just like drama. We learned how to do that. So it's a practice of demonstrating. People have to be able to see it, feel it, hear it. What are we demonstrating? Well, three fundamental truths about humans. We're valuable. We are unconditionally valuable. We are capable. We're agentic beings who can make decisions and solve problems. We're also responsible. The fact that we live in community and ultimately need each other to survive means we are accountable to each other for our behaviors.
Hmm.
All three of those. So, what are we demonstrating? That you and I are valuable, capable, and responsible. Not one, not two, but all three.
Hmm.
When do we do this? Every interaction, every single time we interact with another human being, we
Hmm.
can activate this mindset and demonstrate through our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we're valuable, we're capable, and we're responsible. That's what I call struggling with.
Okay. And give me a real life. So I
Yep.
won't say dumb it down,
Yeah.
but give us a real life example from your own life or from, life of a client or whatever, of what that looked like. Like
Yeah.
what was the situation, but then what does that look like to show that someone's valuable, capable, and responsible, or to reflect that to them, or however you frame that. So yeah,
Yeah. Can I tell a personal story about when
I
it,
think that would be
yeah,
great. That would be great
here's,
because that
yeah.
that connects more, right? That
And then I
it
can
was
give
easier for us to
examples.
understand, right?
I'll tell a personal story when it
Okay.
really hit home for me and came
Okay.
crashing down, and
Right.
then we can talk about it professionally.
Hmm.
So during COVID, about
Hmm.
6 months, 4 months in to the lockdown,
Hmm.
I'm still going to the office.
Right.
Nobody else is going to the office, but I need my routine. I need my structure,
Right.
my personality.
Yeah.
And I would go by myself to our office,
Hmm.
and I would turn on the lights. I would get the heat going just in the one place, or the air conditioning. I would make a half a pot of coffee because that's all I needed. And I would just try to pretend that everything was under control.
Right.
And meanwhile, everything's out of control and I can't control anything.
Hmm.
One particularly difficult day where I felt like I was failing as a leader. I hadn't solved any problems. I didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, we all did, right?
Hmm.
But I put a lot of pressure on myself to have it all figured out for my team. And I came home and I was really stressed out, but I began fantasizing about, oh man, if I could just cook a meal, drink a glass of wine or my favorite IPA, the world's going to be fine. And I have perfect control over that. And I'm going to be in heaven for just a second. So I was already visualizing this beautifully clean kitchen, sharpened knives, my bottle of wine, and I'm going to make a beautiful dinner for my family in my own little world. I
Right.
walk in the door, I open the door, I look through the foyer, and the kitchen is a mess. My daughter, my youngest daughter, still lives at home with us. And this is relevant because without even thinking, I just yelled into the house to no one in particular, but one person in particular. Why is the kitchen such a mess? So in this moment, well, I'll come back later about how I had my switches off, all three of
Mhm.
my switches. I'm like, why is the kitchen such a mess? And
Mhm.
from my daughter's bedroom, I heard, not my fault. I only have to do it once a day, and you don't get to tell me when. And I was like, oh, here we go. Put up your dukes, right? And in that moment, I realized, hang on a second. Where were your switches just now? Valuable, capable. Did you see yourself and your daughter as valuable in that moment? It's like, no, I didn't even value myself enough to own my feelings, to
Mm.
share my feelings, to acknowledge the pain, the anxiety, the lack of control I was feeling. I just
Mhm.
lashed out. So I didn't even value myself enough. What about responsibility? What about capability? I was like, wait, my daughter and I are grown people. We are capable of solving this problem. I am not. I mean, I act like my life's coming to an end because the kitchen's dirty. Like, wait, we
Right.
can problem solve this. And then what about responsibility? Because the fundamental belief of that switch is no matter what happened before, we are all 100% responsible for what we do next.
Mhm.
And I tried to make her responsible for my inability to control COVID. Literally. Why is
Mm-hmm.
the kitchen such a mess? You're supposed to have everything ready for me so I can have this perfect place. I also was irresponsible with behaviors because we had an agreement that she has to clean the kitchen once a day, but she can choose when it happens. She
Right.
hadn't done it yet. That's not her fault.
Right.
And
Day's not
so
over.
that's not over.
Right.
So my switches were off. There's no compassion. We're not struggling together. I was setting up a power struggle
Mm-hmm.
where basically I could have said, look, get in there and clean the kitchen because your dad needs to make dinner and I've had a rough day and you need to whatever. But then I asked myself, if my switches are on, what would I do next? And that was the moment of clarity. Because in our foyer is a mirror. I was
Mm-hmm.
looking right at it,
Oh, right. Yeah.
acting like a piece of shit. Right.
Right. Right.
And I was like, well, if my switches are on, what would I do? And I said, well, first of all, I would go apologize to my daughter because she doesn't deserve to bear the brunt of my failure to live up to my unrealistic expectations of controlling the world.
Right.
But I also need to disclose to her how I'm doing. There's no harm. There's no shame in telling her I had a bad day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
struggling. But also, if my switches are on, I would go talk to her and see if we can't problem solve this thing. Let's struggle together towards a
Mm-hmm.
solution. So I went into her room and I said, I feel really badly about how I treated you just now. You're not responsible for my anxiety. I had a bad day because I wanted to control everything and I couldn't. And that's not your problem. And I said, having said that, what I didn't tell you is how much I love cooking in a clean kitchen. And that gives me this sense of peace. And I said, I'm just curious. I'm going to go take a walk and calm down. But I'm curious, would you be willing to move up your kitchen cleaning to help me out? And she's like, oh my gosh, Dad, totally.
Mm-hmm.
See ya. I went for a walk. 20 minutes later, the kitchen is clean and I'm cooking.
Mm-hmm.
It
Right.
was like, that's what happens when you turn your switches on and treat people as valuable, capable, and responsible at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I failed badly, but you can always turn your switches back on and make the
Mm-hmm.
next move.
Mm-hmm. And what I heard in that story was, vulnerability and authenticity and transparency. And I think that's also what causes a lot of drama is that people don't want to be authentic. They don't want to
Right.
be transparent. They don't want to be vulnerable because maybe that at a certain point in their life, that wasn't honored or that wasn't respected or
Right.
that wasn't allowed in their environment.
Right.
And then when you grow up to be adults, we kind of carry some of these bad habits with us, right? That,
Yeah.
I was at a workshop here a week ago or a little over a week ago, a week-long workshop, and there was just lots of processing going on and stuff. And I've just learned in those spaces that I'm there to get value. So I'm going to be transparent and I'm going to be vulnerable because I didn't come here to waste my time. I mean, it's kind of an efficiency thing for me.
Yeah.
And so many people were like, during the workshop, they were like, thank you for sharing that. I felt the same way. I just didn't want to say anything. And I was just like, for me, I'm like, I was being selfish. I was just making sure I didn't say that, but it was like,
Yeah.
I don't have the want to, if I want to be a better human being, if I want to be a better dad, if I want to be a better husband, I came here to do work. Now, I'm not saying I do that every day, all day in my life, but it was a workshop environment. I'm like, I'm here to work. This isn't a vacation for me.
Well,
And so,
yeah, absolutely.
and it allowed, I also find by being vulnerable, especially as a male, but in general, when I'm vulnerable, it allows others then to do that, right? Step into that space and go, if he's the leader and, or he's in a leadership role, or they see me even in that way, and he's willing to open up, then I can open up too. So it creates this almost like this healing environment or this more healthy environment. Maybe you would say it's a more compassionate environment.
I would say so. And you're describing, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go for it. No, go for it.
Well, your story there is describing the essence of the value switch. When we turn the switch on, we are affirming that we're unconditionally valuable. And what that means is that my value as a human being is not dependent on how you respond to what I say or do.
Right.
I may choose to disclose something that I'm scared to death about what you're going to say. Are you going to judge me? Maybe you're not going to be able to relate and I'm going to feel alone. All that stuff could happen, but it doesn't change my value as a human being. I get vulnerable because I'm worth it, not because you're going to do something magical with it, not because I trust you, but because I'm doing it for me. And it also, like you said, then doing that, establish role models, the protection and the permissions that are necessary for others to do the same. And how many of us are struggling alone by carrying these things? And we just don't tell anybody because of all these inhibitions, but everybody is. And
Right.
it's so freeing when you find out, it's like, oh my gosh, you too.
Hmm.
And maybe that's why executive leaders have coaches, or why they have
Hmm.
where they get together with people,
Right.
Vistage and other places where it's the
Right.
one safe place they can I'm scared shitless.
Right.
And I'm the
And
CEO.
yeah, oh, definitely. And I've been a part of one of those groups for a long, long time, and actually just graduated out voluntarily. But the it'd be interesting to see if there's ways to do more of that, right? Provide those, because I don't think, when I look around outside of maybe a church small group or something, and even there's some, I've heard that I've not been in one, but even in a church small group, I heard you get into some judgment stuff, because a lot of times the church small group dynamic, it's kind of a judgmental place sometimes, right? I've heard people like go to AA sometimes, even though they don't need to go to AA, just because it's real and it's authentic and they can actually talk and share from a vulnerable space. It's like, I think we need more of that in the world. We need more spaces that are open format and I will also say with some type of structure so that people know how to communicate. Because that's the other thing, is like knowing how to communicate so that you're not offending everyone else in the room, right? Because oftentimes, like in the workshop I was in, it was so funny. The facilitator was very, very experienced, young guy, but very experienced. And so people would start saying you. They would say, well, in the world, people are like this, and and he would be like, who, me? Because when like,
Who are you talking
yeah,
about?
are you talking to me when you say you?
Yeah, yeah,
Did you mean? And so he just
yeah,
got, it was like a pattern interrupt, but it was
yeah.
so he did it in such a non-offensive way that people would be like, oh no, I mean I, right? And he go, oh, okay, so not me.
Yeah. And those
but
words are powerful. When you
yeah,
use
they
I
are.
instead of you, it gets
Yeah.
personal. It gets
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. And I, instead of, a lot of times we, people hide behind we, they hide behind you. I should, I'll correct myself. I hide behind we, I hide behind you, right?
Hey, we
Um,
need to clean up the kitchen
right,
here.
right. I'm really meaning you,
Yeah.
but so yeah, definitely. So I think it's super healthy, and I don't know if you help do that inside of companies or not, or in other organizations, but I think it's super healthy to be able to have that smaller group of people. I don't know whether it's 8 or 10 people or less, that can just have those conversations and have a framework in which they can communicate, so everybody understands kind of the rules of the how to communicate, right? It's like, okay, we're all going to speak German, or we're all going to speak French. I mean, there's kind of a common language you can use, so it's not, so
Yeah.
you're not stepping on too many toes, if that makes sense.
Absolutely right. And we need the words, we need the ways to do it. And
Right.
so one of my books, Conflict Without Casualties, provides a template for how to
Mm.
do this. How
Hmm.
do we set up, what are the ways to have these conversations? And I'm not, you know, I'm sorry, but when someone drops radical candor, I want to run. It's like, what? You're just going to tell it like it is and don't care how it comes across? Like, do you care
Right.
about my feelings, or do you think the truth is the only thing that matters? And then in my most recent book, Compassion Accountability, we actually lay out a whole framework for how do you set rules of engagement, what we
Mm.
call behavior norms, for being able
Mhm.
to do this in a safe place.
Right.
And when we work with organizations, and they actually start, that first time they start to get vulnerable, but actually have what we call compassionate conflict with another person,
Mhm.
what they experience for the first time is conflict has the potential to bring us closer.
Mm.
It's scary as heck, but
Mhm.
when you do it right, the result is so rewarding and so enriching. And another thing I might just drop is that there's a lot of barriers, though, to compassion. People have a lot of misconceptions,
Mhm.
misunderstandings, stereotypes, maybe previous experiences. And so we need to meet people where they are
Mhm.
and offer them a pathway, an on-ramp, a way to start making that journey in a way that works for them, so they can start making that change. I don't think we can expect everyone to just jump on this bandwagon in the same way.
Mhm.
And so,
So
yeah. So, anyways, I've outlined
yeah.
5 barriers in my newest
Mhm.
book about, here's
Mhm.
all the things that can get in the way. And I hear you. I get it. You're not
Mhm.
crazy. Let's start wherever you are, and let's see if we can't move the needle a little bit.
Right. And I personally have an issue with conflict. I've been pretty conflict avoidant my whole life. I mean, my old strategy for managing, back in the day when I was managing people, was I would just ignore them until they quit. Right.
Right.
That was
Right.
my way to avoid actually having conflict. Right.
And
It was like,
hopefully someone more compliant who can read your mind better would come along,
right.
right?
Exactly. It was like, I'll just stop talking to them. I just
Mhm.
didn't know how to handle that. So when you
Melvin with
say,
his stapler.
yeah, yeah, exactly. We're promoting you to a
Yeah.
different area of the building. But when you say conflict to bring us closer, so you can actually use conflict to bring people closer. Let's dive
Yeah.
into that a little bit. So help me
Yeah.
understand that, because I'm not clicking with that one yet.
It's a tough one. Earlier, I shared that, I believe that diversity and differences are part of the grand design of the universe. We are made to be different for a reason, because diversity drives innovation. It drives all kinds of cool stuff. Well, necessarily then we're going to have conflict. That's an
Mm-hmm.
inevitable outcome of diversity. In fact, it's probably the most important outcome of diversity is conflict. So there's this massive source of energy in the universe that is there because we're different.
Mm-hmm.
So there's got to be a purpose for it. And one of my favorite mentors, Michael Mead, a long time ago, he said, Nate, the purpose of conflict is to create.
Interesting. The
The
purpose, let's
purpose
say that again. The purpose for conflict is to create.
is to create. And so I heard that kind of out of context, but I was working on this kind of theory that diversity creates conflict. So conflict must have a purpose. And you can use conflict negatively or positively. So negative conflict is drama. That's not what we're meant to
Mm-hmm.
do, even though we
Right.
certainly can. Well, then what's
Mm-hmm.
the positive purpose? Well, creation. Humans are creators. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come from maybe some faith traditions, you might believe more spiritually that we are
Mm-hmm.
built in the image of the creator. So
Right.
we're here to create. And we've been given this energy source, which is conflict. That's actually our source of energy for creation. The only question is, how the heck do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then comes in the last piece of the puzzle, which is compassion. That's how we've also been given that. That's the bright side of humanity, is the need to be self-justified is our dark side, but the capacity for compassion is our saving grace. It's the antidote,
Mm-hmm.
because we have the desire, the inbuilt desire to affiliate and to struggle with each other. And so if we do that during conflict, then conflict creates, and it creates amazing things: intimacy, connection. When you go through something tough with somebody and you
Mm-hmm.
hash it out and you respect each other during
Mm-hmm.
the process, and you hold on to each other's dignity, and you care deeply, and you don't get attached to any particular outcome, but instead you get attached to the best outcome. When that happens, it's amazing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a rush, and you and that person are like bonded.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's what we see in our work. And so
Mm.
that's kind of what the process looks like.
And then I guess, yeah, walk me through an example of that, I guess, just
Yeah.
so we can make it
Yeah.
literal.
Oh, let's take a situation where a colleague or a peer of mine has done something and I'm really bothered by it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it compromised our organizational values. Maybe let's say we were at a trade show and one of my peers did or said something that was like, I thought was really inappropriate and maybe
Mm-hmm.
compromised our integrity. And in that moment, I could pop off and say something. I could hold it passive aggressively. I could do a lot of things, but I decide to have conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing: the conflict is the gap between what I want and what I experienced. This is not their problem. It's my problem. I'm owning this because I'm the one that has the gap. I'm the one feeling it. So maybe later in an appropriate time, I'm just like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I felt really embarrassed and anxious earlier when I saw this. So I'm disclosing my own anxiety. I'm not blaming them for it. I'm owning my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, here's what happened. When I heard you say this, the story I told myself was that blah, blah, blah. And here's how it matches up to what we said we were going to do when we came to the trade show. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm disclosing information. I'm not blaming. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm saying, here was my experience. Here's my interpretation. Here's what I told myself about it. But then there's a third part, which I have to say why this matters. And then I say, the reason I'm talking to you is because we committed to this. And this goes against our highest value, which is this. And it's so important for me that our behavior in every moment reflects the mission, vision, and values of our organization. So now I've just said, here's why it matters. Here's what I'm aspiring to. I'm holding up these principles and I'm asking them to step up. But
Mm-hmm.
then I also have to bring it back to the human part and say, so how did you experience that situation?
Right. And allow them to have their
Yeah.
so
it
give feedback, right?
So here's what it sounds like. I was really embarrassed and anxious earlier when this happened. Here's what I observed. Here's the story I told myself about it. Here's why it matters and why I care so much. How are you?
Mm-hmm.
That's the process we call ORPO, open, resourceful, persistent, open. And it's a template that flippin' works because it levels the playing field. It keeps all the switches on, and it is both compassionate and accountable at the same time.
Very interesting. And this is a practice, right? This is like this is too often I think people want a quick fix. This is something you have to practice. You have to do. I mean, it's a
method.
It's a method, right?
You can hack your way through it and get some pretty good results, or you can practice and get
Right.
really good at it and be able to de-escalate situations, be able to get your kids to do their homework, be able to apologize to your daughter without losing face. I mean, you could do a lot of cool stuff with it. Resolve a dispute with your neighbor around barking dogs. I mean, I'm just saying hypothetically.
Hypothetically.
Or confront a client about not paying their invoices on time. That's real conversations.
Right. Yeah. And the key to that, or one of the keys I heard you say was kind of like, allowing that person in. There's some you're expressing vulnerability. You're also expressing your thought process through that. And then how you feel because of that thought process, and maybe any assumptions you're making, right?
I had a customer service representative use it on me recently, and I was so disarmed. I had ordered this banner for a trade show, and I was really excited to get it, and we needed to get to the trade show. It's kind of a rush order. And when it came, it just wasn't perfect.
Right.
There were some mistakes I just didn't want to live with.
Right.
But I was anxious because the trade show was in like 10 days.
Oh, gotcha.
And I didn't want to have the conflict of going back and being a complainer. Right. But the website said 100% satisfaction guarantee.
Right.
So I emailed and I said, hey, I feel bad right now. I opened it. I was so excited to see it, and I was just discouraged when I saw it because XYZ.
Right.
And I'm just curious, it said this on your website. What's the story? This lady wrote back and she said, oh my gosh, I can't imagine how discouraged you must have been. You were so looking forward to this trade show and you wanted it to be perfect, and it wasn't. I'm so sorry. Yes. This is what our policy says. And here's the process. In fact, I'm going to initiate a reorder right now, and I'm going to expedite it because we stand by our promises. And then she ended it by saying, how does this sound to you?
Right. Wow.
I was floored.
Yeah, she like ninja'd you. That was like
she
customer
totally
service ninja. Right.
And I was so impressed. I actually emailed her and said, wait, have you been trained in how to de-escalate these situations? Because you're totally using my stuff. Right. And can I talk to your manager? Because I want to tell him how awesome you are. And she was like, yeah, actually, we're trained in this. Thank you so much for noticing.
Wow.
And I asked, permission to use that as an example in my training.
Wow. Right.
But I am so loyal now. I'm going to order all my banners from them. And maybe they were out a couple $100 for a banner, but the way they handled that situation was perfect.
Yeah. Had integrity, honesty, transparency, right? All the things, and understanding. Yeah. Which is like, I use that customer service thing. I try not to engage in it much, but when I do, yes, it is a good learning tool, a trigger for me to try to de-escalate myself, right? To try to regulate myself from losing it. Right.
It's hard. And it's really hard because, every day we're frustrated. Every day our stuff that we bought and that we're using somehow doesn't get us what we want. And then we get upset.
Right.
And, those poor customer service people on the other end, they're getting angry people every day. But can you imagine if their first line was first, man, that sucks to be going through what you're going through because you're trying to be productive today. And our piece of equipment is not letting you do that. Right. Let's talk about what's going on. It's like,
they understand me.
Yeah, they hear me. They care about my emotional experience. They're treating me as a valuable human being, right? Instead of treating you like you're stupid or you didn't read the manual or has it plugged in.
Right. Exactly. Well, I'm gonna go a little different angle here as we kind of wind up our time with each other today. I'm just gonna go global and kind of high level here. If you had one piece of wisdom to share with there's 8 billion people, right, on the face of the earth.
Yes.
Let's just assume they all understood English for today. If there was one piece of wisdom that you could share with all 8 billion people, and that was the only message you were ever going to be able to impart to them all, what would that message be?
I would say that never before in our history as a human race has the need for compassion and accountability been greater. Everything depends on it. Our political stability, our energy supply, our safety, our health. It depends on both in full measure. And these are not opposites. They were never meant to be. Compassion was never meant to be in tension with accountability. You can't have one without the other. So I think the sooner we embrace that and get rid of old assumptions, the further we can move to the other side and start living a life that is so much fuller than we ever imagined, and solve the biggest problems.
Compassion goes a long way in this world, right?
Yeah.
That was, yeah, when we look at when we look at biblical stuff, right? Compassion, love is at the base of all, right? Love covers all. Love and compassion are kind of twins or cousins or whatever you want to call it there, right?
And it's not anything goes love. It's not here, let me fix it for you, love.
Right.
And it's not leaving. It's love with also honoring the capability and the responsibility of human beings.
Right. Yeah. The one we're visiting with. Love it. Love it. How do people find out more about your work? What website
Making it really easy. CompassionateAccountabilityBook.com. It's my newest book, and you can go start over there and go everywhere. It's a great place to start. CompassionateAccountabilityBook.com.
Perfect. You can go there and find out more about the book, and I'm sure it links over to you guys' main website or something like that.
Everything else we've talked about, you'll be able to find there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate it and love having you on. And it's always an interesting conversation. I always learn. I feel like hopefully all of our listeners are learning, but I definitely always learn from all of our conversations. So thank you.
You're welcome. Appreciate your curiosity and your openness.
Thank you for being a part of the BriteVibe podcast. For more information, go to BriteVibe.com. That's BRITE Vibe, VIBE.com. Thank you for listening.